Hi, everyone. Welcome to panel 4, which is the legacy of Mars. So we are here with an amazing lineup of cultural workers that live in Phoenix now, as well as the incredible Annie Lopez at the end, Mars artist. We have Sam Gomez from the Sagrado Galleria in South Phoenix, and Roman from Kala Alliance just down the road. So we kind of came up with this panel through the wonderful help of our collaborators, of our community partners and community advisory committee, of like, what's the legacy of Mars, right? Because there's plenty of work that continues to be done, and there's these two wonderful people on stage with us that are leading that charge. So we wanted to make sure that we were taking a moment to acknowledge the work that's currently happening that was started by this incredible group of Martians. So we're going to start with Annie. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Are we doing this here? Okay. Okay, so I was asked to say a bit about myself. So I'm fourth generation Arizona. I have an actual pioneer certificate because my family was already in the state when it became a state, so we're already here in Arizona. I use that history in my artwork. I am a middle child and a middle daughter. I took over as family photographer at a young age because my mom couldn't hold the camera steady, and I was tired of blurry photos. I studied commercial photography and was working in a portrait studio when I saw a paragraph. It was up there in the first slide there, about joining Mars, and it was in the newspaper. I am not one to join groups, and I knew nothing about art, but something told me to go to this meeting. I showed up with a portfolio full of models and products, and hopefully some interesting pictures, but I blanked out. I don't remember who was there at that meeting, and I don't remember what they asked me. It took at least 2 months for them to call me back and let me into the group. I have the feeling that they let me in because I also told them that I did bookkeeping for my father's business. And I can feel that way because as soon as I joined Mars, they handed me the books. That was October 1982. I was a member for 17 years. And thinking of that, I made a list of all the duties that I did at Mars. It's probably not complete, and it doesn't mention any of the many janitorial duties, but I actually wrote it all down. Artist member, board member, artist president, bookkeeper, check writer, grant writer / typist / delivery driver at Deadline, PR writer, typist, delivery driver, reception caterer, bartender, wall spackle expert, and paint overer, artwork label typist and applicator, installationist, press contact, reception photographer, visiting artist host and driver, minutes taker / typist / distributor, and interim director. That's just what I remember. I'm sure there's plenty more. Yep. Liz had showed the slide, but I also had the slide in there of Women in Mars. That was my very, very first show ever. It was Susie Lerma. Yeah, it was Susie Lerma, Liz Lerma, Lene Eller, Martha De Leon, and me. And it was a brand new experience for me. I thought you just made art, hung it up on the wall, and that was it. I didn't realize you're supposed to dress up as a character for publicity photos and for the invitation. And that's what you saw up there. It's like, that show was the spring of 1983. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I don't know who thought up the costuming, but yeah, I went along with it. That kind of set the stage for me further on when I was doing costumes all the time. So anyway, this was just a few years after I lost my big sister in a car accident, and I was in need of some big sister guidance, and they gave it. I heard a lot of, "You need to stay away from that guy." Liz, Susie, and Lene, if you're watching, thank you for that. I am forever grateful. Martha de Leon, she took me to her favorite bookstore in downtown Phoenix. It was a socialist bookstore. And as we left, she said, I would now be on a government list because someone saw me go into that business. She did teach me her radical ways, though. She said to always care for those less fortunate and always tip your server. There was another, see, things are going through. There was a newspaper photograph in here for Las Posadas. That's another program that Mars did all the time. It's the story of the Nativity. So we would open up the Mars at 1201 South First Avenue, and kids would come in. I don't know, did we do the story of the Nativity? Yeah, okay, because I don't remember that part of it, but I just remember that we would open up the gallery and kids would come in, we'd do drawings, we'd do paintings, and we'd hang them on the wall. And the kids loved it because they got to show in an actual gallery. It was a big deal for them. But in the article, too, is I wanted to mention Ruth Fachules, because she would always come to Mars with her guitar, and she'd sing, and she had the most beautiful voice, and she was the most calming presence. And, you know, she just would entertain us. And this was, you know, in contrast to later on when the music got really kind of wacky. So, but she was just such a calming presence among the panic that I know that I felt in preparing for our receptions and our special events. And also in there is a Christmas tree picture. That is at the Lours Building location, where we had actual gallery lighting and not just bare bulbs sticking out of random wall sockets, like at the First Avenue location. Every year around the holidays, some of us would go out and we'd give workshops at like Chicanos por la Causa and AIDS Project Arizona. And with the kids, we would make Christmas ornaments. We'd bring them back to the gallery, hang them up on the tree, and then we'd invite local artists to come in and also make ornaments and put them on the tree and sell them to help that nonprofit. So we were helping other people besides ourselves. We weren't just keeping the money for ourselves. We were donating this money to nonprofits. And local artists were, and like I said, they were also invited to come in and sell their ornaments there. And at the same time, that's when we do the Blue Light Special. They both spoke of that. And at the Blue Light Special, that was kind of like everybody's introduction to showing at Mars. A lot of people could come in because we didn't reject art. We just invited people to come in, hang your stuff on the wall, and it was a lot of local artists' first experience in showing too. So, and speaking of introductions, in 1984, Mars accepted their first white guy as a member. Jeff Falk was brought in by Ralph Cordova. And Jeff had shown at Mars in La Finiquera, and he brought a different and needed energy into the group. He brought performance art evenings to Mars, which brought income to the gallery. He teamed up with Larry Yanez, who's here. Larry, where are you? Yay, there's Larry. He teamed up with Larry and Ralph Cordova, and you know, for music and experimental theater. I did include some folk highlights in there, and one image of Larry and Jeff, they're playing in the alley next to Mars in downtown Phoenix, but it's like, we used all of our space. We used the front of the building, we used the alley. It was great. We just used every place we could, but yeah, you can see a picture of them playing in the alley with the oil or whatever running down the center of the alley there, but we used all of the space. And one thing about it, Mars never said, like you guys said, that Mars never said you had to be brown to be in the group. You just had to have an affinity for the culture. Our mission statement always said Chicano and Arizona artists. And at that time, local museums and galleries were not showing local artists. Local artists was a bad word back then, so they weren't showing local artists or Chicano artists for sure. And Mars was inclusive, and we were international too. We had Rose Johnson, who was born in England, and Wolf Gowan, who was born in Germany. And both artists contributed so much to Mars. And I got to mention that Jeff was never on the stay away from that guy list. So, thank you, ladies. Jeff and I have been married for 39 years now. Yes. And speaking of diversity, Mars members were also diverse in their art forms. So Jack Evans was our first and only poet. He was known locally as the godfather of Phoenix poetry. And like Liz said, he hosted the Divergent Art Poetry Series in the late 80s. He expanded our audience by bringing in the poetry crowd. I thought that was an important step, and we also had video artists as members of Mars. And yeah, again, we're going through too fast, so I can't catch up with my slides. But Mars also provided a place for local bands, and in one of the pictures, you'll also see taiko drummers. So everything that we did was an event. When we moved to downtown Phoenix, other artists began to move downtown, and they filled in all the abandoned office buildings. I mean, at that time, downtown Phoenix was abandoned. We started the art scene in Phoenix. It revolved around Mars. Galleries opened up on Central Avenue in the building right next door to us. I mean, looking out the front door, I'm looking out the front door at Mars. There's, the Jackson Street Studios, OIC building. There's Faux Cafe. We had everybody filled in around us. That's what happened. The guys from Three Car Pileup, Randy Slack, David Dauncey, and James Angel, moved into the basement of the Lures building right beneath Mars. Those are three really talented artists who are still active, and they were drawn downtown by the scene at Mars. And another thing I loved about Mars was Gallery Kids. We gave opportunities to organizations helping kids to come and participate in our openings. And we also brought our own kids to hang out. And there was a gallery kid. Well, my son was here earlier. He was a gallery kid. But Sofia Cordova was here earlier. She was a gallery kid. But that's what I really loved, that we had our own kids there also. And there's a picture in there where, with my son, with the son of another Mars artist in there in front of a fire truck. They were hanging out for the opening reception for Rock on Mars, which was our answer to a Phoenix Art Museum show. That's what we did. We'd have local artists. They'd have fancy artists here, and we'd have local artists at our place. And so, yeah. Again, local artists couldn't show here. Or Chicanos. But anyway, the fire truck is there because a local band member backed into the gas pipe in our alley. And I called the gas company, and Jeff, who was dressed as the ghost of Elvis, used his thumb to cover up the hole in the pipe, the gas pipe. The gas company told me to tell everybody to get out of the building. I was dressed as Priscilla. So I went in and to tell people, you got to get out of here. And Jeff's out there dressed as the ghost of Elvis, holding this, thumb on the pipe. Nobody believed us. They thought it was a performance art piece. So no one left. In the meantime, Phoenix Fire and police responded, and then people finally got it. Oh, okay. But then Elvis went over to the policemen with jelly donuts, and they backed away from us quickly. The firemen took the donuts, though. Yeah, everyone thought it was a performance piece, but all ended well. Nobody blew up. But Jeff was loopy for days after inhaling all that gas. And I cannot speak of Mars without mentioning Ralph Cordova. He passed away in 2019. Ralph was the heart of Mars, and he is missed. When Jeff and I left Mars, we remained close to Ralph, and he was a regular fixture in our Bad Xmas pageants, or whatever performance evenings we put together. His family was kind enough to give me some of his art supplies and clothing to remember him by. His scarf is wrapped around the headboard of my bed, and his rubber stamps and some of his clothing are in my studio, so he's with me all the time. One of the last times we saw him, we had dinner, and then went to a Goodwill because, you know, that's where the best art supplies are. And the three of us went off in our own direction in the store. When I got to the register, I happened to look over at the front window, and Jeff and Ralph were sitting there talking and laughing. It was such a beautiful scene. I've got it in here. It's just so familiar. There they are, right there. But look at Ralph, what he's got in his hand. He bought a lollipop at Goodwill. Only Ralph would do that. But anyway, if you ever visit Ralph's grave and you find a lollipop there, it's from me. I miss Ralph.
Viva Ralph!
Viva Ralph. So what advice would I give to young artists? First off, be quiet and listen. I was horribly shy when I joined Mars, so I rarely spoke, but I found that by listening to people with experience, I learned a lot. I learned everything. Also, do not let your lack of money stop you from making art. Find materials you can afford and find materials that connect to you as a person. Another thing, share. Share your techniques, share your studio, share your experiences. And most important, in your artwork, share your personal story. The art I like the best is the art that tells me something about the artist. Share your time. Go volunteer at your local arts organization or institution and learn what it takes to run a space. And find your people. Also, when someone tells you no or gives you a bad review, use it as fuel. You're better than they are, so show it. And for nonprofits, be open-minded. Have a clear mission, but leave enough room to consider new ideas. Don't limit yourself. Volunteer to sit on grant panels to learn what other organizations are doing and to improve your grant writing skills. Parking was a challenge for us at Mars once the arena and ballpark were built downtown. Fundraising will always be everyone's challenge. Getting members to put in their hours was a challenge. I'm looking at you, Ramon. Where are you? For me personally, getting one of Norman's chocolate chimneys before they were all taken was a challenge. If you ever had one, you know what I mean. And you know how we fought hard to get one. Rest in peace, Norman. These two here are doing the work Mars would be into if it still existed. Community and culture. Another space that I walk into, I jealously think, why didn't we think of that, is Chico. They celebrated their 50th anniversary this year. It's amazing. I had no idea. It's just they were always there, but I had no idea. That's so great. I love that they have a working space. I've used that space as background for a couple of interviews in the past couple of years. And the last time I did that, my fellow Mars member Joe Ray was in there printing. You know, that's what you're supposed to be. That's what art spaces should be. They should be a resource and a gathering spot for artists. I want to say thank you to the Mars artists who welcomed me into the group and helped me find my own way. Thank you, guys. Love you. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Annie. So now we're going to just pass it over to Sam and Roman. So whoever would like to go first, we'd just like to know more about each of your organizations and who you serve and what do you hope the future holds.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Klaso Komatli, gracias for having me here. I'll kind of start a little bit about myself really quick. My name is Sam Gomez, born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in the 90s. I grew up in a time I call them the Phoenix Love and War stories because I grew up around gangs, but I also grew up on kind of like the hyper focusing on the subculture of like hip hop when we talk about graffiti, breakdancing, and all that kind of stuff. I kind of grew up around that. I think that's kind of where I first got my cultural practices as a curator and everything else. I laugh to my friends because we used to have crews, right? If it was party crews or b-boy crews or graph crews, and I was the one who would come up with the names, right, and come up with the abbreviation and what would that stand for. And I think that's kind of pretty much when I got my my first diving into marketing, like marketing campaign, but from the streets, right? And then as far as like in the 90s, I think just growing up and getting through, what we say, getting through the 90s because of all the gangs and just some of our friends are not here. Some got locked up, some got caught up. And getting into the year 2000s, early 2000s, I remember actually before that, like in 98, 99, going and seeing Zarco and everybody zoom, zoom, zoom at the Heard Museum. My friend El Moises taking me to some of the art shows on Roosevelt before it was like no man's land, right? After 5 o'clock, downtown Phoenix was, you weren't hanging around over here. So that's when I kind of got my first kind of experience with like the underground art scene. And as I just kind of started moving forward and started being an entrepreneurship with a clothing company called Phoenician, and then we opened up a shop in 2008 called Culture Fresh at the Arizona Center. And I think that's when I started kind of curating more shows and whatnot. And then we opened up the Sagrado. Actually, we opened up Sagrado originally in 2012 on Grand Avenue at the Melgoza building, the Spiderweb building that has the bars. I'm sure you guys are. We opened that there before you were able to park on Grand, before they put the cement. And so like when we had shows, people were like parked there, but then you see the cars coming and people were kind of like, can we park here? I'm like, no, you're good, you know, but it was always kind of sketchy. But so we were there for about a year and a half, and then we had a cooler. We didn't have AC, so the first summer we had an experience where, like, you know, some of the artwork was kind of warping, right? We were like, this is not gonna work. And at the time, our landlord wasn't ready to, you know, give us an AC, right? It's gonna $8,000. So we closed down. And then I was always, you know, going to South Phoenix. I grew up in West Phoenix off of 35th Avenue in Van Buren, went to Carhaden. And then, but I've always had friends and connections in South Phoenix. So I was always kind of imagining, like, what would that be to open up a gallery in South Phoenix? And I think at the time, you know, just how Roosevelt Row at the time was how things were being displaced, right? Gentrification and whatnot. A lot of artists were finding a hard time living there, and also galleries that didn't have, we weren't a nonprofit at the time, we were grassroots. So we had to do what we had to do. We closed down, we went to South Phoenix, and I kind of wanted to kind of bring the art back into the communities where artists get their inspiration in the first place, right? Where we get all our imagery, where we get all our inspiration, and just like everything that kind of influences in the work that we create. So we opened up in 2016 in South Phoenix. And then, like shortly after, I was brought into a South Central collaborative meeting, and that's when I learned that the light rail was coming. And so I was like, you know, understanding what happened on the east side, right? And so I was a little, you know, I was like, oh man, I'm like, I try to get away from Roosevelt because of gentrification and just having a hard time, and going to South Phoenix, and now the light rail's coming, right? And what that looks like. But I think at the time, you know, instead of having fear, I kind of just wanted to, all right, well, what do we do? And so we started thinking about like what that's gonna look like as far as getting local artists to be doing the artwork on the light rail. And so then with our community partners, we were able to create a workshop, you know, to understand what an RFQ is. And because of that, it led to 95% of the local artists were local, and that helped secure like $1.5 million worth of contracts for local artists. So no, thank you. Yep. And so with that, I think that's where the advocacy started becoming in, right? You know, we were thinking we're gonna go open up a gallery, we're gonna have a little cafe, have art shows, have fun, sell art. But now we were in a different position. Now we had to, you know, we had a train coming in our own backyard. We knew from other businesses in the east side what happened. We were being warned, but we had to kind of just embrace it, right? And try to, you know, turn this, you know, what we'd seen poison coming and turn that into medicine. So I think now we have ownership. You know, I would say that's our train in South Central, right? Because we have the narrative, the artwork there. And it's also for the future, right? You know, being a grid city and the transportation system here is not its best. But so we had to embrace it. So we started that, and then we just started kind of getting into our advocacy role. Not sure if you want me to kind of just keep going into everything, or we wanted to ask some
Yeah.
more questions.
Yeah, let's pass it to Roman to talk about Kala. Thank you, Sam.
Yep, thank you.
Hello. Saludos, everybody. My name is Roman. To share a little bit about myself as well, I'm the granddaughter of Braceros. I'm originally from West Phoenix. I graduated from Maryville High School. And I have just always been drawn and have a huge love for Arizona, Phoenix, and the arts. I work at Celebración Artística de las Américas, which is, as the executive director. And you know, my cultural lens really started forming in 2010, in the height of SB 1070, which coincidentally is also the year that Gala Alliance was formed. And so even though, right, if we look at the records, if we look at the articles, even though that's not why Gala was incepted and why it came to be, I think unknowingly it really became a pillar in the community that the residents of Arizona really needed. And so for me, as I started to grow and build a relationship with Gala, it really became a space where I was able to erase borders, right? That's the best way that I could explain it. And so now, this is actually our quinceañera. We're celebrating 15 years of service, yes. And I pray that we are fortunate enough to have another 15 years contributing to Latino arts. But really at the heart of everything that we do, we nurture artistic talent. And when folks ask me, you know, what is it about Gala that makes you all so special, I really have to say that what really makes us unique is that we're a hub for experimentation, a hub for building community with folks who are also interested in dialogue, in transformative dialogue, right, in cultural exchange. And so what I really love about working at Gala is that we work with artists from the Latin American diaspora, and for us, that is also inclusive of gender. And that is very special because for a lot of folks who, especially someone like me who grew up in West Phoenix, there isn't even an art store out there, right? And so as I think about the legacy of Gala, I'm so inspired by the legacy of Mars and all the artists, right? I want to give a special shout out to Liz, who said no to being a secretary and then became the executive director. That's badass. And I resonate with that because I was definitely somebody who always challenged, right, the norm and the way that we're supposed to be doing things. And so when I think about Gala, I definitely see it as a place for also that challenging and that introduction to new ways of learning and understanding and really like building a sense of belonging, right? Because oftentimes, especially as the Latino community begins to expand here, it's expanded beyond folks of Mexico, right? We have a huge presence of Central America, the Caribbeans, South America, and where do we go, right? And so that for me is what I love so much about Gala Alliance and what we do. And what also makes us very unique is that we do work with a contemporary lens as well, which is very special because there is not really any other spaces that specifically focuses on that for the Latino community. And that's huge for folks who are starting to take their work a little bit more professional and really want to build networks beyond Arizona, beyond the region, and do it more nationally and even internationally. And as the slides go through, you'll see our alumni of resident artists that have gone through our residency program. And it's really such an amazing list of folks who are not just, doing the vulnerable, courageous work of telling their story unapologetically, but it's also a beautiful record of the contributions that Cala has made to Latino arts, thanks to even the leadership that was before me, Cassandra Hernandez and Alana Hernandez, who is now at the ASU Art Museum. And so it's a real honor to be here. And I'm so inspired by you all. And thank you both for helping put all of this together.
Thank you. I think one of the questions that I have is, I got several questions, but I don't know that Mars was thinking like 30, 50 years down the road, like when they began, about what the arts ecosystem in Phoenix would look like. But one of the things that you have produced is a space like Sagrado. What you have produced is an organization like Cala. So I'm interested, Sam and Roman, if you could talk about maybe what you anticipate for the future, because I can imagine a world in which 25, 30, 40 years from now, you're back on this stage to talk about how Cala started, how Sagrado started, in the same way we're celebrating Mars. So what kind of future are you anticipating for your organizations?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that Sagrado has been successfully been able to do, we've been able to, this year we had our 9th annual Mujeres de Desierto show, which was dedicated and done with all women from the Southwest. So having some of these legacy shows, next year will be our 10th year, as well as the ancestral show, 9 years will be, 9th annual will be coming up October 18th, right? We've also just kind of want to talk a little bit about who we serve, but then this kind of leads to the future, right? We've also been able to work with local architects and really think about what like arts and design looks like when we are developing consciously our community, right? What does that look like? And when we talk about gentrification or development, right, a lot of times our voices and our cultural identity is not really being thought of, right? It's an afterthought. A lot of times the artists are brought into the meeting we want a mural, right? But we're not even being brought in the beginning of the conversation. And I've always said that, a good design or a good design project starts with how the people in the community are going to use it, right? What creates a good design? And I think it's led by programming. We also served youth. We had our Forever Rising Young Artist Showcase. The last one we did was in 2023 because I had an accident and I had to kind of take some time off. And so we're looking to redo that again in 2026, which we help young artists understand about design and art, right? We created a space for them, and then we also had a Vans sponsor a workshop where we had 10 youth design their shoes, and then Vans sponsored it and got their shoes, designed, right? Just like you would see in a shop. So we've kind of dib and dab, and I always say that Sagrado's always been kind of like this living organism that kind of likes to experiment, right? Because sometimes people are like, what do you guys do? Because I know you guys are a gallery, but I seen you at this meeting, and I think you guys are working with architects, and then, so it's, it's kind of like, it's kind of a little bit unorthodox in how we do things. And I think I just wanted to share one of the slides. You'll see, like this one right here, the 3rd Street Bridge. There's a 3rd Street Bridge. It's a pedestrian bicycle bridge that's going to be built in the year 2028. Our team, Renee, I don't think he's in here, and Selena Martinez, they're architects. And so we got selected because of prior work that we were doing with other like renderings. If it's from like South Plaza, we had a rendering there and what that will look like to create more of a like cultural space for the lowrider community versus they just kind of park their rides in the parking lot, but they don't have no shade, there's nowhere to sit. So we created a rendering of what that would look like to kind of create placemaking, right? A lowrider cultural center, South Plaza. So I think some of the work that we've been doing has kind of like identified us as these kind of how we influence design. And with this 3rd Street Bridge that's going to be built, we weren't hired to do the actual design, right? But we were able to engage community, indigenous communities in South Phoenix, youth at a school nearby, Academia del Pueblo, and we were able to influence the design. So now we kind of like, we would like to say we're indigenizing the design and the bridge, And the way the bridge is going to be built, and you'll see it in one of the slides, it's going to have an amphitheater on the south bank of it, and it's also going to have these other amenities when you walk over. So we kind of look at it as like, this is going to be kind of like a cultural center, but as a bridge, right? And how that is being programmed is based on the design. And so we always talk about the Rio Salado, and a lot of times we've been activating the Rio Salado for quite some time now with different groups. And so like I always think the Rio Salado is the anchor, kind of like a phoenix, right? It's the grounding, the water with the energy, and then the sacred South Mountain. So we've always looked at that side of town, and I'm trying right now to pitch to the city to create an arts district called Sacred South, right? Sacred South meaning because of our sacred people, our sacred land, our sacred identity, and I just think it's fitting, right, for our community and how we approach art and the art that we create in the sacred mindset. So when we talk about the future, right, what does that really look like? We do have a vision for, in spirit, the Sagrado Futuro. I call it right now the Real Futuro. And when we talk about the legacy of Mars and all the work, and a lot of the work you guys were really doing was, south of the tracks in South Phoenix. And so in the future, I mean, we're like, what does this look like? What if we had a place at the Rio Salado that could continue the legacy beyond the talks, beyond a show, but something that can really be there permanently, something that's symbiotic with some of the work that like the Sagrado's doing in Gala and other artists, organizations that have been tirelessly working for a long time, right? Sometimes we don't feel like our work is being honored, and I want to just thank everybody from Mars, all the Martians here, everybody that's been doing the work, all the elders and all our ancestors who's been continuously doing this work that allows people like myself and Stephanie to be part of this lineage, right? But there's also comes with a lot of responsibility and advocacy. And so, there's always how we're going to fundraise, right? How we're going to raise money. So and just to kind of narrow down with the future at the Rio Salado, we are in talks right now with different people from the city and other groups about creating an actual space, right? An actual structure, a place where all this lives. I don't know if it would be entirely like a museo, but a museo kind of event space, a place where people are welcome, not only from the Chicano and the indigenous culture, but building bridges to other cultures, similar to what Mars was doing, right? Allowing other people to be part of the movement. So that's kind of a little bit about, what we're thinking about the future, and as well as this right here, this piece right here, the obelisk, making visible the invisible, which kind of using technology and creating an artistic approach to creating environmental awareness. Some of the things that we've been doing at the Rio Salado and working with the protectors of the Salt River is how do we use arts and culture and design to create preservation in our environment, in our landscape? How do we become good stewards? And so that obelisk, that project, we won an award earlier this year from AZ Forward. Thank you, AZ Forward, if you're in the audience. And so what it was is it has the air quality sensor at the top, and when the air is not so good, it'll turn red, and when the air is nice, it'll turn green, right? So it's like, how do you use arts and design to create environmental awareness? So a lot of times people think artists are we're very dimensional, right? We're very dimensional, and so I think if we have more artists and designers at the table when it comes to developing our communities and our cities, I think about the show, the Teotihuacan show that we were part of in 2018 with Phoenix Art Museum. So I'm always thinking about the pasado, presente, futuro, and how is that symbiotic? How do we honor the past by taking action in the present and making sure that there's a blueprint and tools for the future?
Love it. Roman, paint the picture of the future for us.
Oh my goodness. To answer this question, and as I'm reflecting a lot on Mars, we saw a lot of the successes and a lot of good memories today. But something I realized was that a lot of the performances and the gatherings that they did came out of a need. And so, although I hold a vision for Gala to mobilize to West Phoenix and make art more accessible to specifically Maryville Village, Levine, Tolleson, the most important thing that I could say is that we're going to stay adaptive to the way that the world is shaping right now and to what community needs, which for me, what I foresee in the future is a lot of collaboration with Sam, with Chico, right, with Cultural Coalition. Like, I really see us coming together to really unite and share resources in a moment where, and I know we're gonna get to this topic, but in a moment where we're losing resources. And so really for me, this question of what the future is like, how do we stay in community in the future? How do we continue to support each other and to create these spaces for artists to say the things that we're all feeling inside, right? And to change hearts and to change minds. And so I really see for us, the future is us to sustain the stage and the platform for artists to show up as their most authentic self. And we'll do that through commissions, we'll do that through performances. I'm especially excited to bring back to life some old programming that we had, which will be announced in the near future. But I also would really love, and I see Kala doing more, yes. I see Kala doing more theater work as well, as a way of storytelling, as a way of telling not just the present, but our erased history, right? That so often gets untold. And that's where I feel, right, and again, like, I just wanna stress the fact that this is what I see for us in the near future, but if I'm thinking 15 years down the line, like, there's no way for us to know. But what I do know is that the way that the values that we hold together and the way that we model for each other for these new alternative spaces that are popping up, because there is a huge momentum, in my opinion, in terms of third spaces, of folks in community who are not waiting around for them to receive an invitation to come in and curate, but they're curating already, right? You'll see in the slides, Kala recently relocated to a new studio space. We pleasantly grew out of our old space in Garfield Galleria. We were there for many years. You've seen it. It has a huge mural on McDowell. It's beautiful. We love it. They're affordable, but we outgrew it. And so now, in the flex space that we're in, the reason that I decided this was our new home is because it really gives us the opportunity and the power to transform and morph the space to however we need it, right? So on a day-to-day, it's home base. It's home base for me and the team, but and you'll see in the slides, but what we will be launching is we're actually gonna be making the space available for artists to be able to show there. And the best part is that there's free parking, which which is amazing. It's the little things. So that's right. That's what you can really expect from Kala in the next year, in the next 2 years, is us really supporting and listening to local artists and trying to meet those needs, and also like practicing transparency in terms of like what is possible, what's not possible, and then how do we talk this out, right? How do we figure this out together? So that's what I foresee for us, and I'm so very excited to be positioned to collaborate with some of these other Latino-centered organizations, because I think together we can do some amazing things. Mm-hmm. That's it.
I'm going to pivot my last question, which is actually, I think because you brought up the third spaces, and also now thinking about, like, there's definitely, like, you guys will continue, right? So similar question that we asked Annie is, like, what are the words of wisdom that you would then give to these younger arts organizations and artists, right? Because there are so many now that are popping up, doing one-offs, also collaborating with you all. But I guess, like, for yourself, what advice would you have liked to receive when you were first starting out? Whoever wants to go first, no pressure.
This was not on the list.
I know, I'm sorry. My bad.
Alec, can I begin actually, and then I'll kick it to you?
Yes.
For any new artist, for any new arts organization, if you could do us cultural historians a favor and keep track of your records and
Yes.
documentation.
Paperwork,
That would be
add
really
your
helpful.
dates.
One of the
Keep a
reasons we're able
file.
to do this is because Mars actually did
Yeah.
some due diligence with
Yeah,
regards
the
to
physical paperwork is incredible. Add dates. Dates.
I can start. So I am fairly new not to Phoenix, right? But I've been in my position for roughly a year and a half, a little bit over. And something that has served me well was I did something of like a listening tour, something of like a basic understanding of the landscape, right? Who's doing the work? What work are they doing? And having that cafecito, right? Like sitting down and just being in community, right? And so for me, our work right now is just to show up and fill the pages. And so what my advice, because this is the advice I received, and I received it from multiple like amazing mujeres, which is one, build your community, but two is understand the lay of the land, because sometimes the information just doesn't reach us. It's not that they're not there, but you have to look for it. You have to go out and find it. And what I have found is more often than not is folks are very willing to support you and to show you the next step forward, and you very quickly know who's not. And I really believe that women, we have this intuitive sense. I don't know about men. No? Okay. Talk to your spouses, to your whoever, your sister, whoever you trust. But we know. And you just I'm never somebody that wishes harm on somebody, but I also, we keep it pushing and we keep going forward. And so that's the advice that I received coming into this role. And I also, I always reflect back on our ancestors and the lessons that we can learn from our place of privilege of being, where we are now. And there is so much there if we're, again, willing to be curious about it. And I will +1 on archiving your posters and the dates and citations. Yes, all of that. Sam?
No, I have to agree. Yeah, archiving and admin and all that stuff. Yeah, sometimes even people like myself, still have a hard time doing that. Right? It's like our creative thought. I think for like the young artists and anybody, I think I've always find your tribe. Right? Find your people. Find your tribe. Find the people that are in your same vibration, same intention. Want to serve community. We have what we call cultural currency and corporate currency, right? Sometimes you got to make money to survive, right? And for some of us, that's really hard to let go, right? It kind of is disruptive. It's not spiritually feeling good for us. A lot of times the artists don't have a hard time wanting to make money. They don't want to sell out or however, right? But I think if you find your tribe and find your true voice for your artwork, right? And stay grounded with that, I think that's the foremost. And I think that goes in any section, right? If you're a designer, whatever you do, musician, theater, find your tribe and find your voice and your meaning. And it's part of your legacy, right? Every time you create a piece or a painting or anything, right? You're adding to your legacy, right? Your book, your chapter. But absolutely, I have to agree with Stephanie. You got to be able to collaborate with community. You got to be able to think outside the box. You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Right? A lot of times, we get too comfortable just doing the same thing, and I see some artists too. Sometimes they have a hard time. They don't want to grow, or they don't want to go out of their series that they're painting. But I think find your tribe. Ground yourself as much as possible, but also lean on your elders. I want to thank Marcos Albarran. He's not here. Carmen Guerrero. She's on my board. Martin Moreno, Zarco, Jim. Annie, everybody, there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that we have around us. And so for you, younger artists, man, don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to take a workshop. Don't hesitate to ask them about how they're doing this or whatnot. You need to ask as many questions as possible. Otherwise, time flies, and you don't, that's the only thing we don't get back, right? Is time. So, but yeah, lean on your elders, find your tribe, ask questions, and don't be afraid to show your artwork and to network and be yourself.
Amazing. We did it, guys. End of Mars Revisited. So thank you all so much for being with us today. I know it was a little off schedule, and so I invite you all to stay. The next 2 hours, the museum will be open. There's a bar right outside, and then the contemporary and modern wings are open. I'll make a plug for, I have a show up. The 2025 Arizona Artist Awards is currently on view. So we have Safat Salim, Omar Soto, and Elizabeth Benita. So please make your way up to CATS 2 and check that out, as well as the whole first floor is contemporary artists, including Gloria Martinez Granados, which is one of the artists that Martin shouted out. We have one of her pieces on view too. So thank you all so much.
Can
It's
I do
amazing.
I'm sorry, can I do a shameless
Plug away.
promotion?
Yeah, I have a
So
shameless
our 9th
plug, too.
annual Ancestral Show is coming up October 18th. We do it at the Audubon Center. We've been doing it there. It's an indoor-outdoor experience with teatro, poetry, food, vendors, art, so much music, everything. It's in actually Zarco and Carmen's son, Quetzal Guerrero, and his wife will be performing. So it's October 18th at the Audubon Center. It's a free event, family-friendly, so you're welcome and hope to see you guys there. So thank you, guys.
And then Roman had a quick plug. No?
good.
Okay.
That's
Can I get the panelists just to come up real quick to take a photo, and then you're free to go. But
We'll see the rest of you outside for
yeah,
alcohol.
we'll see you in there in a minute.